Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first, the ISOP Education Committee's first webinar of 2022. I am thrilled today to introduce Dr. Gobburu, who many of you are familiar with. He is a man almost needing no introduction whatsoever, but as many of you may be aware, Joga is a professor at the School of Pharmacy and School of Medicine at the University of Maryland in Baltimore. He was at the FDA for about 12 years, and under his leadership, a Division of Pharmacometrics was formed at the FDA, and he oversaw many policies being developed there. He is a world-recognized scientific leader in the area of quantitative disease models and their applications to decisions. He's best known for transforming the field of pharmacometrics across the world into a decision-supporting scientist. He also established a Pharmacometrics Fellowship program at FDA and received numerous awards from the agency while he was there, including an Outstanding Achievement Award. He also received an Outstanding Leadership Award from the American Conference on Pharmacometrics in 2008. The Tanabe's Young Investigator Award from the American College of Clinical Pharmacology, also in 2008, and the Sheiner-Beal Pharmacometrics Award from the American Society of Clinical Pharmacology and Therapeutics in 2019. Joga sits on several editorial boards for journals. He's a fellow of the ACCP, AAPS, and the International Society of Pharmacometrics, and he has published over 120 papers and books. He also co-founded the company Pumas-AI Inc, a healthcare predictive analytics company, and Vivpro Corp, an R&D Intelligence company. I hope you all will join with me in welcoming Joga, who is here to talk to us today about communicating to influence. We also have a wonderful panel to help facilitate some discussion after Joga's talk, and my co-host Marion Pichot will introduce those folks very shortly. Before we do that, though, just a couple words of housekeeping, which is if you're wanting to submit a question for the discussion after Joga's talk, please be sure to use the Q&A facility, which you should see at the bottom of your screen directly to the left of the chat button. So if you use chat, that's great for just interacting with the attendees. But if you want to have that question, make sure it reaches the attention of the hosts and moderators. Please use the Q&A button. So Marion, over to you to introduce our panel.
Thank you very much, Mark. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's my great pleasure to introduce panel members that we have today. Kritika Shetty is an Associate Director of Clinical Pharmacology at Tara. Kritika has a PhD in Pharmaceutical Science from the State University of New York at Buffalo, US. Prior to joining Satara, Kritika was a clinical pharmacology reviewer in the Division of Cancer Pharmacology at the FDA. Prior to that, Kritika was an investigator in the PA Sciences Group at Novartis for biomedical research. The second panel member is Dr. Dhaval Shah. Dhaval is an associate professor at the University of Buffalo, from the Department of Pharmaceutical Sciences at the University of Buffalo, and he was principal scientist at Pfizer before becoming a professor. His research focuses on understanding the determinant for the absorption, distribution, metabolism, and elimination of protein therapeutics and novel biologics. His lab uses the principle of pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics, modeling, and to support the discovery, clinical translation, and late-phase development of a novel biologic. The last but not least panel member is Tarek Lail. Tarek is currently an executive director at Daiichi Sankyo in the Quantitative Clinical Pharmacology Department, where he leads quantitative pharmacology, pharmacometrics, data science, and specialty medicine clinical pharmacology. Prior to that, he was at Bristol Myers Squibb in the clinical pharmacology and pharmacometrics group, where he spent approximately 10 years working in roles of escalating responsibility and main interest is in using modeling and simulation approaches to optimize decision-making in drug discovery and development, and to improve translation from internal and external preclinical knowledge. With that, I'm going to leave it to Yoga, and Yoga, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. This topic is very near and dear to my heart. I've always practiced pharmacometrics as a decision supporting science. So part of that is communication and strategic communication and negotiation. And the publication that you see, the reference at the bottom of this slide, is kind of the basis for this talk. So we go through methodically, we present a tutorial on communicating to influence in that article. So instead of repeating the same content, I wanted to give a higher level view in this webinar, and perhaps use the material to generate discussion, which is communication is two ways, rather than trying to give a lecture. So I look forward to the with the panel members as well as the audience, both here and probably post the webinar. So I really encourage, if you have not seen that publication, please go read it. I have to say this, generally I don't read my publications. I find them boring to read my own publications. But in preparation of this webinar, I was kind of forced to read it. I actually liked it. I still would have published it if I had to do that today. So thanks to Shaili Malhotra, who was my trainee at that time, who helped with this publication. So please give it a read. It's not too technical. It's not dense. It's an easy read. All right, let's get going. There are three essential skills, in my opinion, for a clinical pharmacologist. When I say clinical pharmacologist, I mean everybody under the sun. So you can say quantitative clinical pharmacologists, you can call them pharmacometricians, you can call any other term, modeling and simulation scientists. I'm just using a generic term, clinical pharmacologist. We need three things. One is the technical skills. That's our domain expertise. We need to know the business skills. Business skills here does not mean transaction of money or such. Business skills here is we're in the business of drug development. So we need to understand drug development. There is no question about that. And then we need to have soft skills. Now, these are gears. I didn't design the size of these gears, but I think all the three should be the same size. They're equally important. Now, do we cater equal importance in a given typical project for all these three is something that we will have to ponder for ourselves. But these are the three essential skills. We here are going to use this as the basis for the rest of this, shall I say, sharing of experience, thoughts. Pharmacometrics, you probably, if you have heard me talk any time ever, I always show this. Pharmacometrics should be about the strategy. It's not about number crunching. It's a much higher level ask in terms of clinical pharmacologists and pharmacometricians and modelers supporting the decisions. It's not about number crunching. Number crunching, we know how to do it, so we'll leave it at home. We don't need to bring that along everywhere we go. We did a survey among professionals with varied range of experiences, including those who have been in the field for more than 10 years. And 80% of them feel that we are not trained in strategic communication skills. And you can say, I wonder why, but it makes sense to me. Look at now I have had experience in working in a non-academic setting and also an academic setting. And we don't have any courses or any training in communication. We only teach students how to operate a machine, how to operate some analytical instrument or some software to make graphs, some coding, but do we give equal importance to soft skills? According to the survey, 80% feel we don't. So if something happens, we lose the connection and the webinar ends now, this is my bottom line. You will see this slide many times. I want you to remember only 4 things from this conversation. You go with a strategy always when you're communicating. Behave like an expert you are. You don't have to prove you are an expert. Focus on the decision and think long-term. These are the 4 things we will drill down. I will drill down into each one of these in the rest of the talk. So let us start at communicate. I do not mean communication means writing rosy words and poems and novels. That's not rosy English. That's not communication. Communication is about transmitting your ideas, thought process, intellect in some form. It could be written, it could be verbal, to achieve a goal, which is in this case, a drug development decision, for example. So that is the purpose of communication here. So we may not be in a position to make that decision. So that's where the influence comes in. So this is influencing without authority. It's even harder. So communicate to influence without authority is what the relevant topic for us to converse today. What is the value we bring? As a group of scientists, as a society, as a community, what is the value we bring? In my opinion, this is the value we bring. If you look at this, this is internal combustion engine, which was introduced in 1937. But if you looked at what was the most popular vehicle, transportation vehicle in, I think even in the slide is somehow slow. I'm not sure why. Yeah, here, 1915, it was still the horse buggy. It was not the car. Although the internal combustion engine was, invented like 30, 40 years ago in 1915. Why is that? The reason is that the technology, the innovation did not disrupt it was not a disruptive innovation, the internal combustion engine. It was cool, but it did not translate into success. It was not until Ford created the assembly line saying that every household should be able to afford a car. And that is when the automobile revolution took off. So it was not until Ford created this assembly line, that was the first introduction of assembly line to manufacturing. That is when disruptive innovation occurred. Why is it relevant to us? What we're doing is disruptive innovation, meaning we have we are introducing, or we have introduced a technology, an approach that the users are not familiar with. They did not know that this could be done. Who knew that you could approve a drug based on using modeling and simulation entirely? Who knew you could waive a drug-drug interaction study using a PBPK model? Who knew you could discover new novel pathways using systems biology, quantitative systems pharmacology modeling? So but we didn't invent the regression methods. We didn't invent the differential equations. we didn't invent the computer. And we brought all these together, like Ford. He didn't invent the internal combustion engine. He brought that. He brought, the tires. He brought everything else, the pieces together, and a manufacturing process. This to make an automobile available to general public. That's exactly what we're doing. We're taking off-the-shelf solutions, putting them together, and to form an approach that the users were not familiar with. This is 20, 25 years ago, probably. And because it is a disruptive innovation, that's what we're doing, it is completely applied. So we are not in the process of finding the next atomic particle. We're completely 100% applied. When we are in applied science, communicating to influence a decision has to be part of our job description. So I hope I have impressed you why that, it is important for us to go with a strategy. There has to be a strategy to what we're doing because it's applied science. It's a disruptive innovation. It's about strategy. That's the first point. Second, our role. I want to refresh. This is from another publication, which is I published, Should Pharmacometrics be training the next R&D president? I actually believe that pharmacometricians, we should be, clinical pharmacologists, should be aspiring to run the R&D in the next 5 to 10 years, but we have to shape towards that. I think we can do that. If that is the goal, how do we align our skill set? Is what I'm going to show you in this slide and the next slide. This is like a pyramid. The blue face is in terms of the skills and knowledge. The purple face is the kind of the ladder, the cadre and the rank. So core skills and knowledge, that's the base of the pyramid. Without that, we are not here, okay? Then there is a second tier, which is advanced technical knowledge, meaning, yes, I can perform my analysis, I can design a study, I can, that's all core skills and knowledge, including soft skills and business skills, which is understanding drug development basics. Advanced technical, maybe I can do heavy trial simulations or some parametric hazard modeling, these advanced topics, whatever they are for your field, that is what it is. Then the highest would be to introducing new tools. So we have several examples. You take like Mats Carlson's or Scheiner's, Jaskos, and they introduce new approaches, new modalities, new methodologies, such that all of us will benefit. So this is kind of the pyramid which reflects a sustained innovation, meaning we can do what we're doing better, faster, and more efficiently. And then you have a different set of scientists that we need, which actually I think are seriously lacking in our field, which is the core skills and knowledge base is common for all of us. But then we triage into a little bit more advanced technical, not like the previous one. Then another track is disease, meaning look at, for example, I always give this example of anti-infectives field. There are a set of clinical pharmacologists in the anti-infectives field who are also, quantitative scientists. They stuck to anti-infectives field, and they really know about that field as much as any other, drug developer, any clinician in that field. That kind of a domain expertise in the clinical pathophysiology and the disease area is also very important for us to be successful in the long run. So we have to have disease experts among clinical pharmacologists / quantitative clinical pharmacologists, and drug development strategy. How do you develop a drug for rare disease or for a pediatrics or for any other non-rare disease? So that expertise also we have to have. The next level in this type of scientist would be either hands-on clinical practice in a hospital setting or hands-on drug development training. Then you go to a systems thinking, meaning then you will be ready to be a R&D head. And the cadres, the ranks are shown on the purple side of the pyramid for each of these core skills and knowledge. So what is the bottom line here? We go through this kind of a training in some fashion right now, but we could streamline that based on these approaches if you agree. The core skills and knowledge are common, that we all ought to have those three things, right? Technical, drug development, or business skills, and soft skills. Now, given this training that we have gone through to become who we are today, that I say that we don't have to prove that we are the experts, that we can do the NCAs, we can do the population analysis, we can do all these scientific analysis. I don't have to prove that every day. So when I want to communicate to influence, I am going to leave that at home, because it is like seeing a doctor. If I see a doctor, that person doesn't need to explain to me the methods of how the X-ray works and how he looks at the X-ray in the light and what he looks for. He doesn't need to explain all that to me. I take his advice because I know, I recognize, I pay him or her to provide that expertise. So the same thing for us. I don't have to prove I can code, I can write equations, I can interpret this, I have the clinical pharmacology training. So I want us to leave that when you go to communicate, to influence the decision, don't bring the math and don't bring that to prove that we are experts to the table. That's given. Now, in terms of the style of communication. So far, we're talking about two things. One is the strategy part. Why it is important for us to be strategic? Because we are in the business of disruptive innovation. And two is our expertise. We are experts. You have to believe it. That's how you have to go into a meeting. Then when you go into that meeting, because we are the experts, I don't have to prove that the approach of the communication style becomes more of deductive style than inductive. Deductive is basically you're going to say that here is what we're going to do. 100 milligrams given once a day is where we should go. Let me show you how I came with this recommendation is deductive. Inductive. Let me start. I had data from study 101, 102, and half of 103. I had so many subjects. This is my demographic table. This is the softwares I use. That's the modeling approach. This is how I validated the model. And by the way, I recommend 100 milligrams once a day. Completely different message structure. So because we are strategic, because we are experts, we go with deductive, to the point. Because there is a contrast in how a clinician or a pharmacist who operate in the clinical domain are trained. They are trained in a deductive way to derive in communication as well as the thought process. But we, or whoever is trained in like a PhD setting, they are trained to ask questions. They have to be, very particular about the methods and such. So there is a place for both of them, but not for communicating to influence. Not for communicate to influence, the deductive. So we covered 2 points so far. That's the behave like the expert you are. You are the expert, behave that way. Understanding our business. A survey was conducted, and what the responders indicated was, we asked 4 questions. how do you rate? Which one do you think is the top skill for the kill? Kill meaning you're going to influence the decision. Impactful presentation, credibility of the presenter, knowing the audience, and identifying the question. So among all these, identifying the key question and knowing the audience were ranked the most. This is among us, our peers, okay? So this is among us. Maybe some of them are on this webinar. It's not the impactful presentation, rosy slides and colorful stuff. That's not the killer. It's the question, identifying the question. For that, we need to know the business and knowing the audience. I'll get to that in a minute. Of course, credibility, it's given, right? So there has to be credibility of who is presenting, and that's given. That's given. Okay. That brings us to, so these 2 points we talked about the understanding the key question. Here is a systematic way of arriving at that key question, which is, I call it the DIA principle. Anybody who has taken a course with me or worked with me, they will know this. Decisions, information, analysis. It is in that order. So when we receive data, we should not go eagerly to analyze the data. We always have to start at the D. What is the decision at stake? What questions you have to answer to support that decision? Then what information do I need to answer that, support that decision? Then what analysis should I embark on to support the decision? And it is a cycle because we do not know answers for everything. It is an interdisciplinary, enterprise. We're dependent on pharmacologists, toxicologists, statistics, biologists, clinicians, and so on. So there is this process. It's not one cycle, but you may have to go through that a couple of times before you arrive at the final decision. And this has served me a great deal throughout my career. DIA, and I'm gung-ho and like very religious about it. I always follow this principle. Let's peel the onion a little bit more. Decisions comes from domain expertise and business knowledge, the competition, strategy. So you are developing a new drug for an oncology indication. You need to know what happened with the other drugs in that indication, for that indication in the past. Who else is in that space? You need to understand that. How do I show a superiority or a differentiation from that So that kind of a strategic thinking, you got to have it. And you got to have some feel for the regulatory policies. What type of studies and points, how long does it take, and all that. Also, you need to have a feel for it. That drives the decisions. So this, to me, is towards the systems thinking. For us to be able to come up with these decisions and key questions, you have to have a lot of experience to do that. It's not easy for a fresh graduate to be expected to do this. But we have to, if that graduate picks the second pyramid as the path for professional growth, we have to provide that scientist opportunities to be able to fill this blue circle. Then the information comes from experiments, trials, pharmacology, pathophysiology. We know this very well. Analysis also, I don't have to spend time. So I just want us to appreciate that the process, the sequence is decisions, information, analysis, the DIA principle. There is overlap between these. I won't spend too much time. We can talk about it maybe offline or at a different forum. Framing key questions and historical knowledge is strategy. You got to have a feel for, it's an overlap between decisions and information. And then you have the information analysis. You can think about data warehouses and user applications, automations, all that stuff comes under interactivity. And behavioral skills comes as a understanding the organizational culture, who's the big dog in the room, how do you approach different people, all that is behavioral skills. So it's a loaded view of a corporate organization and our role, but you can think about it. Hopefully it will help you kind of formulate your thoughts on how to position yourself in terms of being an influencer. The core is a systems thinking, which comes from a lot of experience across these different aspects. Okay, let's keep going. So how does a DIA look like? Meaning, how do I do it? There is a worksheet actually I use in my courses. If you're interested, you can write to me and I will be able to send it to you. Let me give you an example. So this is for tetrabenazine for Huntington's disease. This is not about science. Don't worry about the disease and such. I'm just giving you a case study so you appreciate. So this company did 2 trials. One of them failed, one of them passed, and some details are provided here. So this is an orphan designation, fast track, no approved treatment so far for that disease at that point, and you have you're responsible for the drug development. The question here, the decision to make is there substantial evidence of effectiveness? The point I wanted to make was the decision has to always be relevant to drug development or a patient. Remember that. So it's not like whether, was I able to estimate variance covariance matrix? No, that's not, that we do it in the basement. So this is almost a binary response or a quantitative, meaning what is the dose. So it is a binary or a quantitative response, seeking question. So is there substantial evidence of effectiveness? You can do whatever you want. At the end of the day, you want to come up with yes, because of these 3 reasons. Then for you to be able to answer that yes or no question, is there substantial evidence of effectiveness? Meaning you're writing your summary document. How are you going to make a case that there is substantial evidence of effectiveness? Then you have to show primary analysis of one of the trials, the primary analysis of the second trial, which failed. Is there exposure-response relationship for the first trial? Is there exposure-response, if possible, for the second trial? Are they consistent? Then there are other specific questions for that trial. You come up with these key questions, you answer all of them. Ultimately, they contribute collectively, totality of evidence to the decision. That's the notion. So the focus should be on the decision, not on how wonderful the analysis and how complicated the analysis was. Okay, so we covered 3 things. Now, I'm almost done. Last part, we have to have patience. We need to think about long term. I really like this image. The reason is, this is a plant, and the rapport, meaning the rapport you're developing with your interdisciplinary folks, your team members, is nurturing that rapport, that the water is nurturing the plant. But it takes time. When you plant the seed, you're not going to get this flower. It takes time for that to blossom. So we got to be patient. So it will take you, if you want to be an influencer, you have to be in the organization for at least 3 to 5 years. Otherwise, we barely know where the bathrooms are. So then you develop this rapport, you will be able to influence. So that kind of a disciplined culture we should have. If we want to communicate with influence, we have to focus on those 4 things, particularly this rapport. I cannot, overemphasize this. This is very critical for us to be able to pitch in to be an important party for the final decision making. So with that, I hope I have given you enough ammunition to think through these 4 things and go with a strategy. I explained to you why, behave like the expert you are. I hope I've given you enough reasons to believe that, and focus on the decision and think long-term. Thank you very much. Marianne, I'll give it back to you.
Thanks a lot, Joga, for the very interesting and very inspiring, I would say, presentation. I would like to open it up for panel discussion, and please send questions. Maybe we can actually, sorry, I'm taking that back. Maybe we can start by the question that came up at the very beginning of this presentation. It's on one of the first slides that you showed, 20% on the communication skills. There were actually two questions on this. The first one was, who actually answered that survey? One of the first slides, with the pie chart.
Yeah. I got it. This one. It's in the publication. If you can go to the publication, we explain how the survey was done, and you can maybe review that. Yep.
Okay, thank you. So now let's.
Marianne, I think that was for the first survey, right?
Yeah, the very
It's the same survey with
chart.
2 questions.
Okay.
I was presenting it in opportune locations for the flow.
Yeah, I think the question was like, who was it given to? Who answered the survey question?
So these are all scientists from pharmaceutical companies or the regulatory agencies.
So, that's
So can I ask you, Joga, was this the opposite way? So 80% lack the skill. Is that
That's correct.
the intention?
Meaning 80% do clinical pharmacologists like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's crystal clear communication, I guess. It is 80% say we don't have it. That's what I meant to say. Thank you. That's a good catch.
Thank you, Joga. So let's open it up for a panel discussion.
So great presentation, Joga. I think I wanted to get your, being an academician who has worked in the industry, I see, unless you really are part of the group meetings and stuff, you don't really understand, interaction in the bigger picture, right? A modeler can be either somebody who has done great statistics, has technical skill. On top of that is clinical pharmacologist, somebody who has come from engineering background, a great MATLAB scientist who is coding as a modeler, or somebody who's a pharmaceutical scientist who has learned coding, right? So based on the origin and your undergraduate and graduate degree, now we are an application-oriented field. Everybody's kind of mixed up in there. How has your strategy differ in terms of providing them opportunity based on the background that they come from to really build that communication? And what do you think typically lacks from certain sector that you think should have courses or a couple of classes added in the curriculum to help at that?
Yeah, so it's actually a challenge, in my opinion. It's a big challenge for training, and so when I was at the agency, for example, we recruited fresh graduates and such, but we had plenty of opportunities on a daily basis. Whether you go to a sponsor meeting, you go to an advisory committee meeting, you have to practice, and those are all like hands-on, like exactly how you do an experiment in a lab. That's the communication experiment we were able to do. But in an academic setting for training, because I have a crossover experience now, the opportunities are very limited. My own students have never seen me in a negotiation role ever, because there's no opportunity here. And yeah, and professors don't negotiate. So, but this is where I think an alliance between pharmaceutical companies and academic institutions is important, because we tend to send graduate students to companies and have kind of a generic experience maybe during summer and such. But if we have focused on, if they pick my track is this pyramid, not this one, this pyramid, then maybe we can come up with some opportunities for them to develop their soft skills and business skills to rather than keep, doing more analysis, more, this and that. So that could be the only way, because you got to have the lab to train them. That lab of communication can only occur either at a regulatory agency or in a pharmaceutical company.
Just a thought, maybe in journals which are affiliated with ISOP and a one-pager every issue on a really successful communication story or something like that can build over the time a series of documents somebody can read as to very shortly what was the issue and what was the most effective way to communicate. And we may have a body of literature which gives a relevant example. Again, I'm just throwing it out there. Yeah. But we gotta really try our best to somehow create a body of education, because as you're right, it comes from experience, but you don't have that when you are really student.
Correct.
So, Dr. Joga, I have a question related to the question Dr. Shah just asked. Your presentation made me think back about my experience working with pharmacometrics colleagues. And quite often I found that many of my colleagues in pharmacometrics tend to be somewhat reticent about sharing their honest opinion or recommendation on program level decisions. They tend to have a preference for sharing findings about what the data is telling us, but are often somewhat reluctant to translate that into an actual clinical actionable recommendation. Sometimes this is more of an organizational culture, sometimes this is a personal preference. So my question to you was, what kind of advice might you have for pharmacometricians who find themselves in this position, and also for clinical pharmacologists, in terms of how we can be better collaborators or better partners for our pharmacometrics colleagues to enable them to provide such input?
Yeah. So may I ask, Kritika, what you think might be the reason why they didn't do it? Or is it an enigma?
So, I mean, to me, it almost struck me as more of an organizational culture thing. This is, pharmacometrics.
So I see. So they can do it, but somehow they were stifled?
Somehow they were shy.
Shy. We
or
cannot,
reluctant. Maybe a little uncertain about making sort of a definitive.
Okay, so maybe they're afraid of making a mistake.
So, for example, the question was: there's an ER, is the dose optimized or not? Is the bigger question: do we need a PMR study or not? What do you think? It's very difficult. It was very difficult in that particular.
Yeah, because we are not trained to take a position. You see, so I'm glad you asked this question, and let me explain to you my own what shall I say, growth as a person over the years.
I'm asking as a clinical pharmacologist who wants to do
better. I understand that. So if you think about how the power flows in an organization, if the power resides in this clinical head, even in regulatory agency, it's the same kind of power structure. They make decisions and they have some liberties they take, because at the end of the day, it's their signature on the dotted line.
Right.
I'm probably behind. So that type of mentality has to be disrupted, meaning we have to say that we, although don't sign on the dotted line, but we do indirectly, and we have a responsibility to influence that what goes onto the paper before signature. And only then we grow as a field. Otherwise, I will call you only when I need a UC calculation. I will not going to put you in a position where you can sign on the dotted line. My R&D president dream that some of us will become that will never be fulfilled. Yeah. So we have to step up. But it's a personality thing as well. Some people are comfortable taking risks. Some people are not comfortable. That's okay, but that is uniformly distributed world. So there has to be some people that we have to identify them who like this triangle, the pyramid, and we have to nurture them, put them in positions where it's okay for you to make a mistake, go do it.
So just be as a clinical pharmacologist who also often doesn't have very much authority, it's just a matter of sort of being more encouraging and nurturing of our metrics colleagues, or did you mean it more?
I think authority is a evasive thing. I think you
No,
only have
absolutely.
as much authority as you think you have. You have authority. You just have to have a strategy to influence it.
Right.
You do have authority.
Right.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way to think. Actually, I was also, well, I'll share this little later. I was thinking about my own experience with the transition between inductive and deductive ways of communicating.
Yeah.
And that kind of hinged on understanding that people already assume that you're an expert. It was very difficult to do fresh out of grad school. And I learned this lesson on the job. And I'm still getting comfortable with, but my approach changed once I realized from experience that people already assume I'm an expert. So maybe that's just something that might help some of the audience members who are newer or in their career like I am. So it just to share an experience that things get better.
But you see, I'm also in a way contributing to this indirectly. As an academician, if they don't write their thesis in the inductive manner, they don't graduate. You cannot publish a single article, including our own abstracts for this organization, if we don't put them in the methods, objective methods, results, and discussion. So we are saying we not only reward that inductive thinking, but we make it a requirement for you to be even passing. This is opposite to what is needed in the field.
Absolutely. When I first graduated, I felt this need to explain myself, to say, this is why I'm saying what I'm saying. So I'd always start with the story of the rationale first, because that was my academic training. Until I ended up in rooms with very busy, very impatient clinicians, and they just tell me, is the dose okay? Yes, no. Just give me the answer. That's right. So and underpinning that kind of questioning was the assumption that I know what I'm doing, that I'm the expert. Absolutely. So it took a minute to get used to, it took a while to get used to that, but it gets better with time and experience. Just to share.
Good.
Yoga, let's take a few questions from the audience, and there are two questions that are somehow reviewed. The first one is, how can we train our skills in supporting decision-making based on epidemic skills? And the second one is, what are the key components on early science focus on? One focus on cross-functional to understand the domain of drug development.
Yeah. Let me open the chat maybe. Your voice was breaking up. I don't know if it's me or.
Want me to maybe because it's working better now?
Yeah. Which question are we looking at, Amit?
So
Taneja?
the first one, how can we train our skills in supporting this making in clean farm based on pharmacometric results? And the third one, what are the key components on early scientists should focus on? One, focus on cross-functional opportunities to understand the full domain of drug development within an institution.
I see. Cross-functional is basically, let us say that you finished your core skills and knowledge training, the core set of skills. Then you want to have cross-functional, meaning, let us say, like Dowell was indicating, you have somebody from engineering, but now that person wants to understand the disease aspects of a particular disease. Then they have to leave the engineering skills behind for that particular period and go work in the disease area. Be it in a clinical setting, shadowing somebody, or in a clinical department who do not do any modeling, but have to come up with, deal with patient selection or endpoint selection, or they're daily challenges. We have to insert ourselves into that group and be part of that group. That is how we cross-train. I hope that's the question, and I understood it correctly.
If the answer was not convenient, please retype a question.
Yeah. And the next question was what, Maria?
So the first question was, how can we train our skills in supporting decision-making in pharm based on pharmacometrics results?
Yeah, how can we train ourselves? I think we had a discussion, right, with Kritika and Tawal. I hope that was what's helpful. Like, for example, think about it this way. You want to master LC-MS, MS, you can't read a book. Maybe you have to read a book, but you still have to find a lab which has LC-MS, MS, and then, you know, request them to learn. That's how we do it. The same thing here. You have to find, quotes, a lab, an institution which has this LC-MS, MS called communication or, you know, business skills, where you can hone in on your business skills or soft skills, and then you go there and then do it. There are also courses for the soft skills. The courses are important. They give you a structure to think about. There are different approaches, styles. So it is important to go through that type of communication course. Most universities have it. You should avail that. But you have to insert yourself into an organization and with a goal of honing your soft skills and business skills, not more of your modeling skills.
And just one plug, I think ISOP also has this now mentoring group where, you know, if you are a member of ISOP, you know, you'll be able to find mentor or mentee, and we can match that. So if you think really need to be mentored in certain area, feel free to reach out to the mentoring group. We'll be able to help you find a good mentor.
Once again, just to sort of share my experience, this is less of a question. It helped me get better at making decisions. Once I understood that decision science was its own thing, there are lots of resources and potentially some training courses that can help with that. But making decisions is not something we're trained for academically in grad school necessarily, or sometimes not even something we appreciate on the job. But it's its own science, it's its own skill, and there are resources in literature and books to learn more about that.
So I'm sorry, Marion, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I lost the internet there for a few minutes. I guess you guys might have noticed that. So I don't know if this question got asked or not, but first, thanks for the great presentation, Joga. Obviously, this is a topic that will live on as long as we have technical expertise in trying to make decisions in all industries and in all research and development. But you know, for junior scientists and postdocs, they often don't have the opportunity to take courses that help them with soft skills. And they may have a very limited budget to be able to do that. This may have been asked while I was off, I don't know, but are there any, you know, top 3 courses, if you only can take one a year or one every 2 years or one during your postdoc, top 3 courses that they could take that would allow them to start developing these skills? Like something on LinkedIn or something available in general.
Yeah, so I think I'm glad you asked this question, and it just occurred to me. I want to distinguish between a couple of things. There are courses like Toastmasters and others that folks recommend. I want to distinguish that I am not talking about that type of communication. I'm not talking about enunciation, pronunciation, ability to stand up, talk. I'm not talking about that kind of conference. I don't think you meant it that way either. So what we're talking about is strategic communication. How do you do the homework? How do you plan for, you know, what the message? How do you show the key graphs, key tables, and, you know, to support your deductive, reasoning, that unfortunately you have to work with somebody in that capacity. So for example, there's a new graduate student, Tarek, you are in a position who can teach a graduate student or a postdoc. So they have to spend time with you. They have to spend time with, Marian or Kritika and who on a daily basis you have to deal with this with interdisciplinary teams. So they have to learn from the where the action is. This, I don't know if we can do a course or it's not possible in my opinion. We can have some preparatory maybe, but they have to get it hands-on, like surgery. This is like surgery. I can read a book eating my popcorn, but I cannot cut anybody up just because of that, right? I have to go to the operating room. I have to be with somebody. I have to cut it open. Maybe I'll make mistakes. I show them that is the only way to get this experience.
So I agree that that's critical. So trial and error and mentorship, obviously very important towards developing the right skills to communicate, your pharmacometric work in an effective way. But perhaps learning, a style of communication, ways of presenting information so that people can easily grasp it. Even if it's about a different topic, eventually you'll be able to translate it to your technical subject. So for pharmacometrics.
That's correct. That's right. I mean, again, we draw analogies to, for example, medical training. The difference between a PhD training and a medical student is a medical student spends anywhere from 2 to 7 years in the field seeing patients and such. If they don't complete that 2 years, they won't even get a degree. They won't even be qualified to write a licensure exam. They spend time with the patients. They're hands-on. We don't have the equivalent of that. If we want our graduates to be working in a drug development setting, there is no requirement, nor provisions, opportunities for our graduates to work in a drug development environment before they graduate. So that is something, and we have so many scientists, so many companies, and there is a dearth for clinical pharmacologists and pharmacometricians and such. We should be coming up, we could come up with a program, even if it is for 3 to 5 companies who can chip in and then say, I'm willing to take 1 or 2 students every summer. And that focus will be only to, for communicating to influence, meaning our business skills. We just focus only on that. You learn your modeling skills in school. I mean, you're good there. So maybe some program like that, maybe, I don't know. ISOP can coordinate that.
Maybe we can create a metaverse, where things are really more tangible. And you can have examples based on previously, like if FDA allows that, you can go to BLA documents and NDA documents, present the data which is in public domain, and prompt the course taker to communicate the answers. So something like that could be possible. But you're right, it will require a lot of people to contribute, but it's a good initiative. Maybe ISOP can begin.
Yeah.
So thank you, everyone. I'm conscious of the time. I think we've run a little bit over. I want to thank our Joga, our speaker today, as well as all of our panel members and attendees, especially those of you who raised your hand and asked a question. Sorry if we didn't get to everyone, but we hope that you'll join us for other webinars we have planned in the coming months. And there will be further information coming out about that in the next few weeks. So thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joga. Great job.
Take care.